Use a fat separator, and this is how you do it. Just let it rest for a couple of minutes, and the milk solids will fall right to the bottom. Now that the milk solids have fallen down to the bottom, we are going to pour them into another container, and what will be left will be pure clarified butter.
Next, Nick shows us how to prepare matzo brie.
Matzo brie. Matzo brie is not an Italian specialty. No, it isn't. What is matzah to begin with? Well, matzah is a cracker. You can see what I'm doing with it. Here is the whole cracker. As you can see, it's very thin, it's very dry, and it has a significance to it which is very important, both religiously and historically. Matzah basically is unleavened bread that the Jewish people had to make on their haste escape from the slavery under which they were in the Egyptian Empire. And as they made their exodus across the desert, they could not wait for the bread to rise, and they made this cracker. This cracker, to this very day, over the holidays of Passover, is used as a reminder of the bondage under which they were and the freedom later that they achieved. But to me, it's something else. To me, it's a memory of one of the most important men in my life, next to my own father, Saul, my father-in-law. Saul welcomed me in his family, and as I taught him how to make pasta with meatballs, spaghetti, tomato sauce, he taught me how to make matzah brie. And when I asked him, who eats matzah brie? He says, hey kid, matzah brie is the favorite breakfast of my girls. And since you're marrying one of them, it's a more good thing for you to learn how to make it. And step by step, he showed me how to do it. So here is this recipe, and we'll pay homage to this man who's so great in my life. The first thing that you want to do before we move to anything else, we have to soften the matzah. How do we do that? Very simple. You notice that I have quite an involved get-up in here, and the get-up that you see is that I broken them in pieces. There is a strainer in here and a bowl underneath to catch what? The hot water. I have a pot of hot water in here. I will put this around, and as I do, I try to hit every corner of it. After we put this on top of it, you want to let it sit for just a couple of minutes to make sure that the matzah softens up. Why is that important? It's important because at this point you want to give it almost a cream-like consistency once you mix it with the eggs. Now, let me move on and let me show you exactly what I mean, and you will see where I go with this. Here we have the eggs. At first, it looks as simple as making scrambled eggs. And in a certain way, it is as simple as making scrambled eggs. There is one addition that I like to make to the scrambled eggs, and it's the onions. These onions are caramelized, and Saul, this was his signature, he used to love making caramelized onions. Still to this very day, the family gets together on the first of the year, and caramelized onions are just about every dish that we make. The next thing is the matzah itself. I'm going to add it to the eggs. At this point, the last thing that I like to do, just to give it some extra flavor, is a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And then mix everything together, just like this. That's all that you want to do. You notice right now, as you're looking into this, how the matzah itself, what was formerly a very stiff, hard cracker because of the hot water, has softened up. We're almost done. There are two ways of making this dish, and I'll show them both to you. Follow me. In this pan, we have clarified butter. You can use extra light olive oil if you want to, or you can use any other type of oil that you want. But with clarified butter, I find that it has a flavor, an elegance to it that makes it a little bit extra, and that's why I like to make it. So here we go. I'm going to add it in here. Now, you want to treat this as if you're making soft scrambled eggs. So once you add to it, you have it on nice hot heat. Then what I like to do is reduce the heat to medium and stir. Stir continuously, and as you do, make sure that nothing sticks on the side. One of the things that I do to prevent that, I use a non-stick pan as I have it in here. Now, I told you there are two ways of making this dish. One is like this, treating it as if it was scrambled eggs. The other one is what I have here on the side. Now, come here, I have to show you this. This is a pancake that I've made. Very simple to make. It's the same identical preparation. We have cooked this pancake in a little bit of clarified butter as well, and all that I've done, I cook it for 2.5 minutes on one side, and then I cooked it for 2.5 minutes on the other side, and I left it exactly as it is. I'm going to finish its cooking right in here so that I brown it underneath. Meanwhile, let's bring this to exactly the consistency that we want. We're basically done. there is just a little bit more of decoration that we need to do, but we don't need to do it in the pan. So let me turn this off altogether so it does not overcook. And now I will get ready and I'll show you exactly how to make it. I like to pile it high in a bowl like this. And what I like to do at this point is to use my favorite spoon that I always have with me. This spoon takes me to battle everywhere I go. Plus, it makes me feel as if I conduct an orchestra. In my head, I am, but here we go. Now watch this. This is very important. I like to put a little bit in the middle, and I like to build it up just like this. This is one of those things that people say, no, it's too much. Do not listen to them. This is not too much. This is barely enough, and you will see what I mean. Two types of decorations that we're going to do. The first one that I love is the adding of the applesauce right on top of it, just like this. Next to the applesauce, we go with sour cream. And watch this as well. A nice big dollop right on the top. Doesn't matter if it goes and collapses on the side. It's the flavor that counts. And then chopped chives. You can add anything you want. To me, chives are ideal for this. So this is one version on how it can be made. Let me show you how to plate the other version. I'll move this on the side, bring out the other little plate that I have set up. Mamma mia, che bellezza, veramente una cosa incredibile. I know, Italian and matzo brie don't go well together, but if you were like me, see me in the kitchen with Saul, having this time together. This man always supported me for everything that I wanted to do. When I told him that I was going to go into the cooking business, when I was instead in the finance business, he said, you can do anything you want. And he believed me. Forever, I'll be grateful to him. So let's go with the same decoration here as well. We go with the apple sauce right on top of it. And then a little bit of the sour cream. Now remember, the sour cream is almost like a little bit of an ice cream-like taste on it. And once you cut through, I want you to imagine these flavors. You cut through, there's the onions, the salt, the pepper, the matzo itself that now is plumped up because it's picked up this water. Plumped up with the egg yolks itself, giving you this wonderful finish. And a little bit more of this. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This, that's so pretty, it's for you. This, instead, right here, this is for me. Saul, I love you. I will always remember you. Buon appetito. La fine del mondo. Buonissimo, buonissimo. What is the easiest way to peel and chop a clove of garlic? You will need this, a pastry scraper, and this is how you do it. Peel, and chopped.
Next, Nick shows us how to prepare a breakfast burrito.
Breakfast burrito. Is this an Italian recipe? No, it's not. Why do I make it then? I love breakfast burritos. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you something. I was just, first, before I go on with the story, I'm chopping up some ham in here. And what I want to do is to add it to a nice bit of butter that I have already warming into the pan, because this is going to make it taste a little bit better. What it does, when we do it this way, it brings out the natural flavor that the ham has. And when you toast the ham, it brings it to the next level. Now, why is that I love this burrito? This burrito is dedicated to my brother Mario, who comes to my house every once in a while to visit me, and I love to have him over. And when it comes to making pasta, or when it comes to making sauces, he always tells me, not enough salt, you should have cooked it longer, you should have cooked it less. But when I make the burrito, my brother is happy. To me, this burrito is magic. Come here, I'll show you how to make the rest of the burrito. We have eggs that we scramble in here. To these eggs, we want to add a little bit of salt. Be generous with the salt. A little bit of pepper. And a little bit of cream. Whisk it all well together. Now, the idea here is this. In there we have the ham that's browning nicely. Just not really browning, but picking up a little bit of the burnt onto it. It increases the flavor. If you want to make this dish even more interesting, what you could do, you could add some onions, minced onions. You want to chop them just as fine as the ham. We're ready to add it now. The technique here is quite important. When you add the eggs to this mixture, one of the things that you want to make sure is that you keep stirring them in the pan. So once I add it, I just let it be for a second or two, then gently I reduce the heat from high to medium, and then you stir gently until this is perfect consistency. Let me show you. We're almost there with the consistency that we want. As you can see, the eggs have started to change color. You can see them becoming nice and creamy the way they're going in together. There is one more ingredient that I want to add at this point. This ingredient is the cheese. The cheese, you can use any mix that you want, but choose cheeses that melt well into this flow. And here we are. Perfect. At this point, I turn off the heat completely. This is the consistency that I'm looking for. I'm going to take the eggs off the heat. I'm going to put them right next to my cutting board. The next thing that we want to do is concentrate on making the tortillas. I'm using flour tortillas. I find that they're the best. I'm basically right now having two pans which I preheated. It's important that the kind of pans that you use are non-stick. Why? Because if this is the first time for you to do it, one of the things that this will guarantee is that none of this will stick to the bottom. And you want to use your hands. When you use your hands, be very careful. What you want to do is to really make sure that the tortillas pick up the softness of what you want. For that to happen, you have to rotate them. They will, I wouldn't say burn up, they will brown up a little bit on the side underneath it, and that is fine, nothing wrong with that. But what we're trying to do is to make them soft again. So here we go. One here, one there. This is the first one that's really gotten us to the consistency they want. See how much softer it is? Do you see it? See the difference between this and when I put it on? This is what we're looking for. Now this is almost ready for us to fill. Come here with me. I'm going to put it right here. And let's get started with a little bit of the mix in the middle. Now, you can see the cheese oozing. Oh, just imagine. Don't put too much because it's going to spill out otherwise. Now, let's talk about the technique. You can use any size tortilla that you want. I went with this little one because they're fun, first and foremost. They're little, and you get to eat a lot more than them. So, you see? Boom. This one is done perfectly. Let's go back in there and let's do it with the other one. The heating in the pan is not really cooking the tortilla. It's making it softer. It's making it more pliable for us. And here we go with the other one. We place it right in here. Once again, we add the filling with the eggs. We have enough here to make several of them. At least I want to make two to show you how to do it. Always pay attention to what you do. Do not take your eyes off the ball. So, technique-wise, you fold this on the inside. You go out this way. Once you bring it to this way, then you want to take it from the top, and from the top you want to fold it your way until you have it at the seam, exactly as we done it right here. Oops. And you know, if it doesn't fit perfect, you can cheat. One of the great things about them, people look at this, oh my gosh, you're a professional. Not at all. I do this for fun. I love doing it in the kitchen. It makes me feel great. It makes me feel accomplished. But the best part is that they taste awesome. In the same pan in which we cooked them before, now we want to toast them, just like this. When they're toasting with the seam down, the next thing that I want you to do is use a brush. Brush both of them with a little bit of melted butter, and on top of that, add a little bit of cheese. Now, we have the seam perfectly cooked. I'm going to flip it over because you want to take advantage of the cheese on the other side with the melted butter to create a nice little crust. And then we're ready to go. Let's bring it to the board. I want to show you what they look like on the inside. Now, this is the part with the cheese, and you can put any kind of cheese that you want, even provolone for that matter. I find that Parmesan is great. When you cut it, you can cut it in whichever you want. I find that it's more interesting when you cut it as a bite, like this. And you have to see how gorgeous it looks. Look at this. You can see it's oozing with creamy finish and filling. It's just absolutely fantastic. This, I must tell you, is something that my brother adores. My brother's like the kid in the commercial, you know, the one that didn't like anything until they go, oh, look, he loves it. Mario, he loves this. As a matter of fact, this I'm going to eat myself. And there is the one that I made for you. When you make it at home, you can have some nice guacamole put on the side, your favorite recipes for salsa, dip it in, and you will see exactly what that looks like. Meanwhile, until I see you next time, this is for me. Signori e signori, ciao a tutti. The perfect drink for a fantastic breakfast like this is called Kir Royale. So we started out first with French toast. Then we moved on to matzo brie, and then we had breakfast burrito. Now, what we have in here is simply a little bit of cassis at the bottom of the glass. All you have to add is your favorite champagne or prosecco. And as you can see, this beautiful red color is exactly the drink that we want. And fill it to the top because this tastes so good. You make Kir Royale for your friends, you will never, ever be able to get rid of them. So, as we always do, this is for you and this is for me. Salute a tutti. It was a pleasure, an honor to have you with me, and I hope that you'll try some of these recipes at your home, for your family and your friends, and when you do, salute. Enjoy life. Life is beautiful. Chocolate bread pudding with 2 chocolates. It's easy to make with ingredients that you find at your local supermarket, and it tastes great. In this saucepan, I have some milk, some cream, and I've added some chocolate. I melt it all together to make chocolate sauce. We're gonna add this to the other ingredients. We have egg yolks in here. To this egg yolks, we're gonna add some whole eggs. Mix them real well. To this, we're going to add some vanilla extract. And then our magic ingredient, sugar. To the egg mixture, we add the cool chocolate sauce. Now, this is the part I love the most. To our bread, we add white chocolate and dark chocolate. And then we add our mixture, which has eggs, sugar, and chocolate sauce. Mix it real well so that everything is perfectly incorporated. Let's add our mixture to a baking loaf pan that you have coated with some butter to make sure that nothing sticks to it. The oven is preheated at 350. Now cook it in there for 35 to 40 minutes. Once the bread pudding has finished cooking, let it cool off. Then invert it on your favorite serving tray and then add some more chocolate sauce. Chocolate bread pudding with 2 chocolates. Today's dishes are going to be inspired by the American South, primarily from the state of Louisiana and Georgia. New Orleans and Savannah are my 2 favorites here in the American South. But the food, the way it is, I find a lot of similarity with the Southern food, Southern Italian food that I grew up with. Let me get started. This is my version of a sausage gravy, which I will serve with a unique chicken Milanese. So what we have in here is sausages that we have sauteed with some onion, a little bit of olive oil. Now, in order to make the sausage gravy, is to add a little bit of flour. Why? 2 things that we want to do with the flour. We want to cook the flour so that the flour itself picks up the flavor of everything that's in there. And as you see, as I add the flour, as I move it gently around, as it cooks, already creates a nice thickening. And you already see that the olive oil that we add in the bottom is starting to change color. Once this is completely dissipated, we no longer see any trace of the flour. The next thing that you want to do is to add a little bit of milk, because the milk is going to be exactly the body that will give us this wonderful, wonderful finish on this gravy that we're putting together. Now, stay tuned, because when I come back, I'm going to show you how to make my very own version of chicken Milanese, Southern style. Spicy, just right. One of the things that we want to do with our gravy at this point is to add a little bit of chopped basil. In this case, I wanted to make it fancier. I add the basil cut that's known as chiffonade. I do it to bring out a little bit of flavor and also to give it some wonderful color. Now, when you make this at home, if something should happen, for example, that you feel that your gravy is too thick, one of the tricks that I like to do is to add a little bit of milk as the gravy is simmering until it gets the consistency that you want. When we're dealing with gravy, as in the case of Southern gravies, a little bit thicker is not a problem. Let's take a look and see how to actually make the broccolini. What are broccolini? Broccolini are commonly known as Chinese broccoli or Italian broccoline, or bruccoline. Brooklyn and broccolini in Italian almost sounds the same. And I remember when I was talking to my relatives who had come back from the United States when that emigrated, they used to tell us, I live in a broccolina. And none of us would understand what that means because we assumed they lived in a field full of broccoli. Little did we know that there was a neighborhood in New York called Brooklyn, but with the Sicilian accent, the dialect and all, broccolina. Now, I want to show you how to do it. First and foremost, I want to add a little bit of red pepper flakes because it makes this Sicilian. So we have extra light olive oil in the pan, super hot. The broccolini have been cut in pieces and they've been parboiled. At this point, all that you want to do is to just add it in the roast state like that. Make sure one thing for safety, extremely important. When you parboil the broccolini, before you add them to the hot oil, make absolutely sure there is no remnant water left because the water, as soon as it hits the extra light olive oil, it will splash back and it would hurt you. Before we move them away, let's add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Let's quickly talk about the technique that's going to ensue. I'm moving them off from the high heat, and I'm going to take them on the stove here where the heat is down to a simmer. I used to do this in the restaurant, and it was another chef that taught me how to do this. And what happens over a long period of time, this broccolini, I'm going to reduce in size because most of the water is going to come out and they're going to become nice and crispy, and the flavor is going to be explosive. If you like garlic, right before you serve them, add some chopped garlic, some finely minced garlic, toss them a couple of times, and the flavor is going to be right there. So we're going to move this away. I'm going to do a switcheroo. Here I have another pan with extra light olive oil, nice and hot. And the next thing I want to show you is how to actually pound the chicken. The chicken is a chicken breast. We want to call this chicken fried steak. That's how they call it down south. In truth, to us Italian, this is a Milanese. Very simple to do. Wax paper in the bottom, wax paper on top. And if you had a bad day at work, this is a fantastic dish to make. Boom, boom, boom. You don't want to make it so super thin that you make scallopini. You just want to flatten them up to a certain point. What the paper does for you is two things. It prevents the chicken breast from slipping out, and at the same time, it retains a certain amount of control as you deliver the blows and making sure that you do not rip the meat of the chicken. Now, before we get started with the next step, what I'm about to show you is extremely important because it's going to make your life very easy. Most people like to do this on plates. I don't, and I want to tell you why. I like for my chicken to go through the breading process in these containers. And the reason why I like to do it in these containers is because it retains everything perfectly well for you. I'll show you what I mean. Here is the breast that we have pounded. I'm going to add it right here. Before I turn it, I always like to put a little bit of salt on it and then a little bit of pepper. Using the tongue right in here, we flip it on the other side. A little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. You see the way the technique that I use with the fingers going like this? It means absolutely nothing, but looks great on television. The next thing is something you're going to love. I have some extra breadcrumbs over here, and this is where most people make mistakes. When I was a little boy, I had a family whose boy was one of my good friends, and they used to invite me to their house for dinner all the time. And once they made the mistake to ask me, how did I make my Milanese, the signora that hosted the dinner? And I made the mistake of telling what I thought. And unfortunately, I thought I was helping her, telling her all that she'd done wrong and how much better my mom was. That was the last time I had dinner at their house. So what we're going to do now, we're going to add the breadcrumbs on top. You see I have this extra bit, and by adding it on top, you're basically ensuring with your fork that the coverage of the piece of chicken is complete. That's where most people make a mistake. Then as I lift it, we go to the other side, and using your fork, you cover it perfectly. This is a simple technique. Some people like to run it through it twice. I'm of the opinion that if you do it right the first time, that's all that you need to do. Now, let's take a look and see if the oil is hot enough. I take a little pinch of the breading and I put it right on it. You see the way in which it's bubbling? This oil is doing exactly what we want us to do. Technique that's very important. When I lay the chicken down, the one thing that I do, I lay it so that the tip is away from me. Why? A lot of people splash this right in here, and if you splash it, putting it from that side, when the chicken goes down, it could splash you back. Very hot oil, very painful. At this point, it's cooked enough on one side. When I move it to the other side, and this is what I love the most, all the flavors in there. We use Italian-style breadcrumbs, so the flavoring is fantastic. We're gonna let this cook for another few minutes until the chicken is cooked all the way through. Unlike meat, chicken, you never, ever want to have it medium rare. This is one of the things. I'm going to take one last step here with our gravy. I'm gonna crank up the heat a little bit. The gravy is nice and thick, and this is exactly the way in which it's supposed to be done. Before we serve this, there's one last step that I want you to do, and that is, once the chicken is ready, to let the chicken rest for just a couple of moments so that all the juices are perfectly distributed to the chicken on this piece of brown paper that will absorb some of the oil. So let me get that done, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. And now we are ready to assemble it all. Allow me for a moment to fall in love with this masterpiece that I did. Bellissimo, bellissimo, veramente. Io non lo so come faccio a cucinare così. For those of you that don't speak Italian, I was just paying myself a huge compliment, telling everybody how great this chicken is. The next thing is the broccolini. I want to show you what the broccolini look like. They are absolutely splendid. One of the things that you notice is that they have collapsed a great deal. And in the process of collapsing, one of the great things about this broccolini, you see it, is this crispy finish that they have in here. This is gold. Every time you bite into it, there's a nice crispiness to it. A little bit of salt that we added before is now sticking on the outside. If you're taking the option and you added some chopped garlic to this, it just takes it to the next level. So here we are. Now we're going to add them to our plate. And be rich with this. And if you really want to take it to the next level, one of the things that you can do is even sprinkle them with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. This is not really from the southern part of the United States. There's a lot of Italian in it, but I got to tell you, nonetheless, it's beautiful. And the last thing that we're going to do is adding our fabulous gravy. What makes this gravy unique is the flavor of the sausages on top of it, together with the basil. Always have some extra on the side because people will ask it to you for. But this is quite simple, right to the point, full of flavor, a little mix of two techniques that I learned here in the United States and that I brought from home. And here it is, chicken Milanese, Southern style, with sausage gravy.
Next, Nick shows us how to prepare biscuits and gravy.
I know this is not a typical Italian sauce, but there is something about gravy that I just love. Look at this. Spectacular. The sausage gravy is a masterpiece. So, what else goes with sausage gravy? I'll tell you what it does, and that is biscuits. Let me show you how to make biscuits. It's a very simple recipe, but you really need to be focused on some very important details. Now, take a look at this butter. What I've done, I've cut the butter in small pieces. This is frozen solid. This is solidly frozen. Why? We want for this to incorporate into the mix that we have. In here we have our flour. So here we go with the butter into the flour. Then we add baking powder. The type of baking powder that I like to use is aluminum-free baking powder. To me, it makes a huge difference. Maybe to you it doesn't, but to me it does. Then sugar, of course, a little bit of salt. What's followed next is something that you want to be careful with. What we're going to try to attempt in this food processor is to do it so that the butter mixes with the flour and creates almost like little pea-like texture. And you do it by, that's it. Take a look at it. It needs to incorporate a little bit more. The secret to making the perfect set of biscuits is to handle them the least amount possible. So we're pretty much done with what we want to do here. We move it into our bowl. The next thing that we're going to add is the buttermilk. When it comes to the buttermilk, look at yourself, look at what you're wearing. It will not stay clean. Flour is going to fly everywhere. The butter will try to hold everything back, but pretty soon you're going to look like a little comedian. But there is something gorgeous about the process in itself. Now, what I like to do at this point is using my hand to mix the buttermilk. And you want to add it until it becomes almost like a solid matter. What makes the biscuits rise? What makes the biscuit rise primarily is the baking powder itself, which has the leavening effect, but also extremely interesting is what the butter does. Imagine this butter as it melts and it cooks because it's very, very cold. it creates an effect very similar to what you've seen and you're accustomed to see in the making of puff pastry. Same concept of puff pastry, but with a few other things. So at this point, what I like to do is almost turn it into a bowl. Then we put it on the roll, and we're going to roll it out. We're pretty much to where we want to be at. So the next thing that we want to do, you want to flour the board. And then we get started with our action. This is a dough that does not allow you to be in a rush. If you're in a rush, this is not what you want to do. And you want to try to handle it the least amount possible. So what I do is I put it in a nice little bowl so it doesn't stick. I use the flour so it prevents from sticking, but notice I'm not kneading it like I would do pizza dough. All that I want at this point is to let these layers to fly through freely, and that's how we're going to do it. A nice rolling pin to give us a little bit of the flour. Now you can see right now, you can see the butter pieces still in here. You see? I like to roll it about an inch thick. Do not go beyond an inch. I tried it before, it does not work to my favor. Now what I like to use is to use small little cutters like this to do it. So go completely like this. Uno, due, tre. What's left behind, I mix it one more time. Try to handle it as little as possible, using your hands to make the shape that you want, but do not knead it, like I said before, like a pizza dough. Here comes another piece. We'll put it right here. Here comes another piece. I'll place it right here. We have enough here maybe for one more or two. And you have to realize the more you knead it, the lesser quality will be. So there's always a little biscuit that's going to be a little bit tough, but the way that I make it and the way that you will make it at home is going to make you legends. You can see already from the way in which it is that here is the last piece, and we are done. So what we have right now is the oven preheated at 400 degrees. I'm going to add the biscuits in there, and then I'm going to reduce the temperature to 325, and we'll let them cook until they're ready. So here we go. The biscuits are ready. Ooh, look how beautiful they are, gorgeous. So how are we going to serve them? Well, I told you before, I made these biscuits exclusively for the gravy. So here we are, we put them like this. We could do all sorts of different things. You can move them around on the side, you can put the gravy on the side to decorate, but the way in which it's done is to just watch it go down like this. Let this gravy cover the biscuits with joyful enthusiasm. Let the gravy talk and say, I am good, because this gravy is fantastic. I made it, it's my recipe, Italian style. And so there you are. The biscuits here are for you, but for me, you should know that when it comes down to biscuits, I love it. And the best way to have it is to spread a little bit of your favorite jelly right on it. I like to have strawberry jelly, and I say to myself, Stellino, you might not be from Louisiana, or Georgia for that matter, but boy, you're good. I pay myself a lot of compliments. Hey Brian, how you doing?
Oh, hey Nick. How you doing?
Always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah.
Listen, as usual, I came from some advice. Looking for some cheeses for a dish I have in mind. What you got going there?
Flagship.
Let me try it.
Flagship's our signature cheese. It's a cross between a cheddar and a Gruyere. It's what we're most known for. It's fantastic. The amazing thing about cheese making is the beginning stages are the curd. You take curds, you press them and age them for 1.5 years, in our case, 15 to 18 months, then you have Flagship.
When I try them on my own, I don't quite understand it, but
Yeah.
to have them in a line like this is like tasting wine.
Yeah, the raw mill cheese and the traditional cheese are actually aged the same amount of time. The interesting thing is the reserved version is only aged 11 months. So you get, nice little idiosyncrasies that change in the cheeses, all the same cheese, same recipe, a little bit different.
Brian, coming to see you here, it's like getting an education and a fun one.
Oh, fantastic.
I really don't know which one to go. Let me get one of each and I'll
great.
figure out what to do.
Sweet. All right.
I'll take them.
Hey.
Thank
see
you so
later.
much.
Yeah.
Appreciate
I'll get
it.
them for you.
Awesome.
Nick shows us how to prepare Nancy's lobster mac and cheese.
This next recipe is my favorite recipe. Why? Because it's my wife's favorite recipe. I call this Nancy's lobster mac and cheese. Meet the principal player in this, l'aragosta agostina. This we're going to use to make this wonderful, wonderful dish. But first and foremost, let's talk about the most important thing, which is not the lobster, but it is the pasta. What pasta? This is a traditional pasta used for making mac and cheese, elbow macaroni. I love them. First, we start by cooking the macaroni until they are al dente. So here we go. Nice. Let's stir them about just a little bit to make sure it's perfect. We're gonna let this cook, and then we're going to make the sauce. The sauce is also commonly known as basciamella or balsamella, like we say in Italy. We start with milk. We get this milk nice and hot. First, we put a bay leaf in it. Together with the bay leaf, I like to put chopped onions. Minced onions will work well, just as well. This is just to bring out the flavor. And then one technique that you've not seen in a long time, nutmeg. You need to grate the nutmeg. This little nut, trust me when I tell you, brings out a really sophisticated flavor to this whole dish that takes you to a place which I consider to be paradise. The aroma is splendid. Do not exaggerate. This little nut carries a lot of character. So the next thing that we're going to do, in this pan, I have some butter which I've melted. I'm going to crank up the heat a little bit, and we're going to make a roux. What is a roux? The roux really is a mixture of flour and butter. As you cook this, two things you want to make sure of. You want to move around, make sure there are no lumps left in by the flour. The flour has to toast just a little bit. The toasting of the flour brings out the complete flavor that ultimately we're going to have. As you can see in there, the milk is nice and hot, and we are now going to add this to this mixture that we've done with the flour so that it thickens up for us exactly the way we want to. So here we go with the milk and the mixture of everything. I'm going to add it in here. I have left behind the bay leaves because we don't need it in there. It's given already enough flavor. And then you want to bring this to a boil. And as it reaches a boil, one of the things that you will notice is that it will start to thicken. Now, as you can see, the basciamella has thickened quite a bit, and the onions are giving it a great deal of flavor. But it's the amount of cheese, the cheddar that we add, and I'm going to add two different types of cheddar. When you do this at home, I find that cheddar not only is the traditional cheese, but it's also the one that really marries well. And I like to mix the two different cheeses because it brings out this wonderful combination of flavors. And when you are, don't be stuck just with cheddar alone. You can do anything that you want, whichever way you want. Now let's stir it about until all of this is nicely melted and completely incorporated into the bechamel. As you can see, most of the cheese has completely melted into it. This is giving us exactly the texture that we want. I always like to taste it. Fabulous. At this point, what you want to do, you want to add the pasta. So here we have the pasta that we cooked earlier, and we're going to add it. Be very careful with this. But this is not all. We're going to add the secret ingredient. Here is the lobster that we taken out of the shell earlier. And at this point, what you want to do is mix everything just like this. Fantastico. Now, do you see how creamy this is? I like to have an excess of amount of cheese sauce into this because when this bakes into the oven is going to be very, very hot. We're going to preheat it at 400 degrees. They're going to reduce the heat down to 325, 350, and we're going to cook it until it's nice, brown, and perfectly done. As a matter of fact, why don't we now turn this off and move it into our vessel. This is the vessel that I favor. Why? It's red. I love red. It's going to be enough for you guys, and I'm going to make some extra one for me as well. So here we go. Bellissimo, bellissimo! Un sogno è questo. In Italian, this means it's a dream. At this point, right before you put it into the oven, you have a choice. You can do it just like this. Me, when my wife doesn't look, I always put a little bit extra pepper in there. Why? I don't know. I like it spicy. If you really want to make it spicy, you can always put a little bit of chopped jalapeno in this. It'll be fantastic. This is going to go into the oven right now. This is absolutely beautifully, perfectly cooked, nice and brown on the top. Nancy's lobster mac and cheese. And now it's time to serve it. And this is the part that I love the most. Look at this. Cheesy, creamy. Look at that. Look at that. When it comes to it, I always cheat. I look for the parts that have the lobster, and I go right for it. So the aroma, the smell, the mixes of the cheeses. I love this. This is for you. Me, I wanted to share with you another idea. This is how I like to do it for me. I put it in a little bowl, I walk around, and there's a lot more in here than it's in there. So next time you really want to do something special, remember, this is a fabulous dish. Easy to make, and if you don't have lobster, you could even make this with shrimp. It tastes wonderful. From my heart to your kitchen. This is with me. I told you at the beginning of the show that I have a unique love for the American South, specifically the cities of Savannah, Georgia, and New Orleans. Savannah to me looks a lot like Palermo. For those of you who would be in Palermo, Sicily, you understand the similarities between the two cities. Grace, beauty, but I think Savannah is even more beautiful in certain ways because of the fact that this great food and this gentle character of the people who live there. As Sicilians, oh Madonna, we are difficult people. The thing that I don't understand is why people, every time they talk to me, they think that I come from New York. It must be the way I talk and the cadence of my accent. But I want to share with you a moment where I really found a part of myself that I thought I had lost. When I came to America, what I wanted to do, first and foremost, I wanted to be an American all the way through. I only ate American food, I dressed like an American, I only hanged out with friends that spoke English. I refused to speak Italian except for Sunday, when I called my parents and have a long conversation with them on the phone. More often than not, it would be right around their dinner time and we would have dinner together. And it was in New Orleans that I was walking around with my wife. It was the first time ever that we visited the city of New Orleans. And I was totally fascinated by the food, by the people, by the place, and how it made me feel. Who knows, maybe in a previous life, I must have lived there. And I remember walking around looking like a poster boy for one of those American magazine ads. There was nothing about me that said Sicilian, nothing about me that said Italian. And I remember from a distance, not that far away, a group of people walking our way. They were fishermen. They were coming back from their boat. They were talking to each other. And as they came close and close and closer to me, I realized that what they were speaking was Sicilian dialect. But not the Sicilian dialect that they speak in Sicily right now, rather the dialect that my grandfather spoke. These words, as they came, they touched my heart. They touched my heart in a way that I cannot explain. It was for the first time that I accepted the fact that I am an American, but I am an Italian American, and I'm proud of who I am and where I come from. And when it comes to pasta, even if it's baked macaroni like this with lobster in it, I'm happy to say that life is beautiful. And who knows, maybe I wouldn't cook this good if I wasn't born in Sicily. And thank God that I was. And thank God that I got to come in here and I got to express what I do. Life is beautiful. I love America, I love Sicily, and I am proud to be an Italian American. Signori e signori, buon appetito. Dal mio cuore alla vostra cucina, arrivederci a tutti. Grazie. My favorite breakfast is French toast. Here is how we make it. To some eggs, we add sugar, vanilla, some cream. Whisk well. The bread is cut about an inch thick. Add the egg mixture to it and let it soak real well. Just cook it 2.5 minutes per side on medium heat. This is how we make French toast.
Plate-burying veal chops with Catalan vinaigrette. They're big, bold, grilled over wood. Kalbi kui, Korean beef short ribs on a charcoal hibachi. And smoke-roasted leg of lamb, the quintessence of Provence. Meat on the bone, hot off the grill. I'm Stephen Reichland, and from the beautiful Esplendor Resort in southern Arizona, it's time to grill. When it comes to flavor, nothing can beat meat grilled and served on the bone. If you've ever grilled a veal chop or smoked a rack of ribs, you know what I'm talking about. Meat on the bone takes us back to a time before knives and forks, when people had the primal pleasure of eating with their hands and fingers. So connect with your inner caveman. Today, it's all about meat on the bone. When you make soup or stock, what do? You put meat and bones into a pot, you boil them, the flavor comes out of the bones into the stock. So obviously, anytime you can cook meat or grill meat on a bone, you're gonna get more flavor. I call these monster veal chops. They're long bone veal chops. Each one weighs about 1 pound to 1.25 pounds. You can order these from your butcher. Now, it begins with the rub. I'll start by sprinkling the veal with coarse sea salt, freshly ground black pepper, lemon zest, that's the oil-rich outer rind of the lemon, chopped fresh rosemary, and dried oregano. Now the liquid ingredients, squeeze some fresh lemon juice through your fingers to catch the seeds. Then a splash of extra virgin olive oil. And finally, dry white wine. No need to measure here, folks. You can just free pour. Then turn the veal chops over and season exactly the same way. And to reinforce the rosemary flavor, you can lay a fresh rosemary sprig on top of each veal chop. Let the veal chops marinate for about 1/2 hour to 1 hour. Do this in the refrigerator. Meanwhile, I'll show you how to make the Catalan vinaigrette and set up the grill. Like all good vinaigrettes, this one begins with finely chopped garlic and coarse salt. You want to mash these ingredients together to release the garlic juices. Next, whisk in red wine vinegar. And you want to whisk until the salt crystals are dissolved. Then whisk in extra virgin olive oil. I'm using a Spanish oil. Ratio is about 1 part vinegar to 4 parts olive oil. Then add your flavorings. 1 finely chopped shallot, 1 finely chopped seeded tomato, capers with their juices, and finely chopped cornichon or dill pickles. Catalonia borders France, and this vinaigrette may have been brought to the region by the troops of Napoleon, who occupied the Iberian Peninsula at the beginning of the 19th century. Let me show you how to set up the grill. This is a wood-burning grill of the sort you would find in Spain and throughout South America. It has a flywheel that enables you to raise and lower the grate for heat control. Now, I've built a wood fire, and because we're in southern Arizona, there's only one wood to use here, and that is mesquite. And remember the 3 rules of great grilling: keep it hot, keep it clean, keep it lubricated. That means start with a hot grill grate, clean it with a stiff wire brush, and lubricate or oil the grate with a folded paper towel dipped in oil and drawn across the bars of the grate. Oiling not only prevents sticking, it helps give you killer grill marks. All you need to do now is put on the veal chops. Arrange them on the grill, all running the same way. This helps them cook more evenly, and it makes you look more professional. Notice the chops go on slightly diagonal to the bars of the grate. If you want a little bit more heat, all you need to do is lower the grill grate. How do you know when it's time to turn the chops? Well, first of all, you'll see some blood start to pearl up on the top of each chop. And then, of course, you can take a look at the bottom, and it's a beautiful golden brown. That means it's time to turn the chops over and grill the same way on the other side. you can see how effective these V-shaped grill grates are for draining off the fat. So if you want to, you can just baste the top of each chop with a little bit of the veal drippings. I like to cook these veal chops to about medium rare, more toward the medium side, just shy of medium. So take a look here, gently yielding. These babies are done. And if you have a little extra sauce, you can spoon it over top of the chops. So while the veal is resting, you can pour yourself a glass of wine. With wood-grilled veal chops, I like a nice Cabernet Sauvignon. And now, the moment of truth. Spoon on a little bit of the Catalan vinaigrette. And look at that, it's perfectly cooked. And you can see how juicy these chops are. Nice. You can really taste the wood smoke. Grilled veal chops with Catalan vinaigrette. It's big, it's bold, it's meat on the bone. Kalbi is the only dish I know where the rib is butterflied out into paper-thin sheets and grilled. And a pretty ingenious way of taking a tough, ornery cut of meat and rendering it crisp and tender. Every great barbecue culture has its version of ribs. Korea's is kalbi kui, butterflied beef short ribs, direct grilled over charcoal. If you're short on time, scant on space, and starved for flavor, this beef on the bone is for you. Beef short rib is cut from the lower part of the steer's rib cage, and you can see there's a cross section of ribs with a thick layer of beef on top. So the first step is to cut each rib into individual sections. Slide the knife on top of the rib almost to the end, and then fold it back and continue cutting. Again, almost to the end, and make another fold and cut the rib again almost to the end and fold it up this way. This is called butterflying the rib. Let me show you on this one. Again, slide the knife on top of the rib bone and cut almost through the other side. Open the rib, make another cut on the bottom. Open the rib. And you can see how beautifully these short ribs are marbled. This is going to give you an incredible flavor. Now the next step is to score the top and bottom of each butterflied rib. And what this does is it tenderizes the meat and speeds up the absorption of the marinade. Now, the marinade. The marinade starts with finely chopped garlic and granulated sugar. And you want to mash these ingredients together with the back of a spoon. This releases those flavorful garlic oils. Next, add soy sauce and sesame oil. And finally, ground black pepper. And you want to stir these ingredients together until the sugar is dissolved. Just pour the marinade over the beef short ribs. Marinating time is about 30 to 60 minutes. Let me show you two other things we're going to grill with the beef. First of all, elephant garlic, which is about 3 times the size and 1/3 the pungency of regular garlic. And I've cut it into chunks to make little garlic kebabs and thinly sliced jalapeno chilies. Next step, the dipping sauce. The dipping sauce is a reprise of the marinade. garlic, pepper, sugar, and mash these ingredients together with the back of the spoon. Finally, stir in soy sauce and water to help cut the saltiness of the soy sauce. And again, stir these ingredients together until the sugar is dissolved. In Korea, kalbi-kui would be cooked on a charcoal brazier in the center of your table. The closest equivalent in North America is a hibachi. Hibachis have been filled with lit coals using this chute to add more coals. And you want to keep the damper open as wide as possible. More oxygen, more heat. Now comes the moment of truth, grilling the beef. So arrange the strips of kalbi-kui on the hot hibachi. Bone side down to start. And while you grill the beef, don't forget to grill the vegetables, your garlic cloves, and thinly sliced jalapeno chilies. You know, in North America, grilling is traditionally associated with summertime. In Korea, some of the best is done in the winter. The grill would be positioned at the center of the table, and you come in January, February, it's icy cold outside, and you gather around the grill. And warming up is half the pleasure. Grill the kalbi-kui, the butterflied beef ribs, until sizzling and golden brown on the bottom. And then turn and grill the top the same way. And the beauty of the Korean method is that it enables you to cook what's traditionally a slow cooking, very tough rib in a very short time using the direct grilling method. It doesn't take long, maybe 2 to 3 minutes per side. And we can just pull off the kalbi-kui. And don't forget your grilled jalapeno chilies and the grilled garlic. And the neat thing about these jalapenos is they crisp up almost like potato chips. So let me show you how they would put this all together in Korea. First of all, you start by snipping the meat with scissors into bite-sized pieces. The beauty of kalbi-kui, indeed of all Korean barbecue, is that it consists of a whole meal in a single dish. We start with a little Korean hot bean paste, and then a few pieces of the kalbi, a couple of jalapeno slices, a piece of grilled garlic, and this is a Korean cucumber onion salad. Finally, what you do is you sort of roll this up into a package, mushi style, and dip it in the dipping sauce. Wow, this explodes in your mouth like a 4th of July sky. Kalbi-kui, beef on the bone Korean style, because sometimes big flavors come in small packages. I really love lamb. It has a very distinctive flavor, very pronounced flavor. It's well marbled, it stays juicy when you cook it. You can serve it rare, it tastes great, well done. It's extremely versatile meat. For most Americans, barbecue means pork, or beef if you come from Texas. So you may be surprised to learn that on any given night on Planet Barbecue, the most popular meat on the grill is lamb. For many people, lamb reaches its apotheosis in Provence, in southern France. Which brings us to the biggest, baddest meat on the bone of all, smoked roasted leg of lamb a la Provençale. Now, this leg of lamb weighs about 12 pounds, and it includes both the lower leg of lamb and the thigh. 12 to 14 pounds of pure proteinaceous pleasure. And it gets a triple blast of flavor, first from the aromatics, then from a rub, and finally from smoke roasting on the grill. To insert the aromatics, take a paring knife and make a series of